I just want to start off with the first question here, which is, again, introduce yourself, and what is one effective strategy you've observed to address recruitment and retention challenges we have? And so that's the first question I'm going to present to each of the panelists, and hopefully they will continue to complement each other.
One effective strategy that we've observed, I think, in 2001 and in the early 2000s when we were facing teacher shortages, we saw a huge investment of funding to kind of address every possible pathway in and support teachers coming in. Similarly, the investments that we've made in recent years have been significant for the development of pathways to teaching, the support for classified staff to complete degrees and get credentials, support for building residencies and residency programs has been a key part of this investment strategy. The funding became available in 2018 and again in 2021, and I think we've had a bit of a slow on-ramp because, of course, we had a pandemic, shut down our schools, sent everybody home, and then got everybody back. A lot of trauma in our system while we're trying to get these pathways going, and a lot more volatility in who's coming in and how many are coming in and how many are staying. We've had a lot of that going on in the profession, but I think the key thing about residencies is that the research, the reason we invested in residencies, because the research says this is a powerful preparation pathway that leads to employment and retention in the workforce. And what we've seen so far, we've got about 98 residency programs funded thus far. We have about 428 residents enrolled in these programs. 75% of those who started in the first cohort were hired by the district that put them through the residency. Across the two cohorts of residents, first two cohorts funded in 2018, 90% are still in teaching. So this pathway shows real promise. We have about 21 or so counties that are involved in residency programs and about 37 or so who've never been involved in them. So we've got room to grow this pathway in partnership with our higher education institutions, but it shows real promise, and continuing the funding with Golden State, teacher grants, et cetera, is also really quite critical.
Dr. Jones.
Thank you. I would second everything that Mary said, and I would add that just looking at the work that we've done at our county office, at the San Diego County Office of Ed, it's come down to a couple things that's been the foundation to a lot of our work. Number one, collaborating with other county offices across the entire state has been absolutely amazing, and I think has really shifted the way that we do things, because one of the things that we do is really have conversations about best practices and pitfalls to avoid. So along those lines, a few years ago, I know we were looking at diversifying the educator workforce and really how do we go about removing those barriers and approach the Department of Ed, CDE. And the CDE actually now convenes a Diversifying the Educator Workforce community of practice where educational leaders across the entire state come together and share those best practices. And a researcher is there as well to talk about the research that supports that work. And then we have conversations about how do we scale that within our own county and among our districts, and that's been incredibly helpful.
Well,
may I stand?
Please.
Okay. I'm behind the column, and I want to see y'all.
Right in the middle there.
Hi, I'm Anna Marie Francois, and in addition to what it says there, I'm a longtime teacher educator at UCLA, and I agree with Mary about the promise of teacher residency programs. We've been having a teacher residency program in partnership with the Los Angeles Unified School District for about 15 years now. And they are thriving in some of the most difficult schools. But I also want us to think about this not just as a pipeline issue, but kind of imagine creating an ecosystem of professional preparation development support across the trajectory of a teacher's career, because that's how we're going to retain them. And so I was talking to my colleague, Rami, from the LA County Office of Education, and we have quite a number of partnerships with the LA County Office of Education for teacher preparation and support, administrator preparation and support, and executive leadership preparations and support, and all the content, pedagogical, professional development in between, and it's manifest in Center X, a K-12 professional development center at UCLA. And I just want to say that we lost last week our founder, Jeannie Oakes. And so I just want to give a shout out to her because this ecosystem idea of recruitment, retention, and support is something that is very promising. We have 2 other University of California schools who have implemented a similar, they've scaled up and implemented a similar ecosystem within their universities, and they're already showing less of a drop of enrollment because, you know, teacher ed has experienced significant drops in enrollment. Their teachers now are thriving in some of the most difficult schools in both Orange County and in San Diego County. So I'd like us to think today about not just opening a pipeline, not just one-shot strategies for keeping them there, but let's think about how we all kind of work together in collaboration and create an ecosystem of professional development, support, and learning. And we also want to create a PR strategy because when you treat people well and you keep them in this professional learning community, what they say about the profession is what's going to bring people into the profession. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. White.
Thank you. I sense that there's going to be a reoccurring theme here. So I heard collaboration, treating people well. I heard partnerships. Those are all of the things that we do in Los Angeles County to help just promote teacher recruitment and teacher retention, because the recruitment is only part of the work that we have to do. And so we learned a lot from the pandemic. We learned how to best use technology as a tool. So, you know, we're doing job fairs, right? But because of the pandemic, many people didn't feel comfortable participating in job fairs as we once knew them. So we took them online. We provided options. We created a hybrid job fair. And that word collaboration, we collaborated. So thank you to Larry for being a collaborative partner with Los Angeles County Office of Education, because we ended up what I like to call providing a global job fair, where we were able to attract the attention of thousands of potential teachers who could fill vacancies in Los Angeles County. But we didn't stop there. We said, well, where are potential teachers? Well, everyone's online. Where online? Well, they're all on Instagram, they're on TikTok, they're on LinkedIn, they're on Facebook. And perhaps all of us seasoned professionals in the room, perhaps we're not on those platforms as much as maybe new and aspiring teachers might be. But we need to meet people where they are. So we began to create promotional videos, and not just your average promotional video. So any of you who've seen the promotional videos that we put out from the HR department in LA County, you know that they're fun, they're inviting. We monitor to ensure that we're getting the traction that we desire. So the hits, I believe those that monitor social media productivity would call it. We use testimonials. And so, Rami, I'm glad that our beginning teacher program team is here. We have a team here. Hopefully you have an opportunity to touch bases with them during the roundtable discussions, but we use testimonials from people who are teachers who've gone through our programs. We talked about coaching and mentoring. I believe I heard one of the previous professionals speak about coaching and mentoring. And so when teachers in Los Angeles County go through our programs, it doesn't end there, because usually it's after the program is over when a teacher is called upon to fly on their own, where we step in and say, if you're not ready and you need additional coaching opportunity, we'll stay on with you and provide that additional support that you may need. So we don't cut them loose and say, the program is over, you've completed, you're on your own now. We remain a partner in this, and we provide them the support that they need. And at LACO, we also tap into our classified employees. And so when I joined the LACO team, one of the things our county superintendent, Deborah Dorlo, asked for is a pathways program. She said, I would like to see us have a program where classified employees who may not see that they have an opportunity for other positions, advanced positions, or even a teaching position as a possibility for them, and I would like an opportunity for that to happen. And so we established a committee. I would suggest if you're an HR person, don't try to go at this alone. Establish a committee, right? Put together a committee of people who have similar objectives in mind, but may bring different areas of expertise to the team. And consider a pathways program to build from within, to provide people who are already on your team with the skills that they need to go after other opportunities within your organization. And so we are very thankful for a lot of the grant funds that we've been able to secure. I know LACO, we have gone through a few rounds of the California Classified School Employee Teacher Credentialing Program grant funds. And so hopefully if you have not had an opportunity to seek out available grants that you could secure for your LEA, perhaps look into that, because we've gone through a few rounds of securing the grant, and we always end up with a waiting list, which means there are people who want to become teachers. We just need to provide them the support and the avenues to get there.
Kevin, as president of Capital Advisors, what are you seeing?
So, I mean, the job that I have is a lobbyist, which is the pejorative word. I'm an advocate for public education, right? And one of the things that's kind of refreshing about the work that all of you guys are doing is working on a problem that you've created so many solutions for already. I mean, what we're used to a lot up here in Sacramento is there's a ton of different priorities, and they're all so good. And a lot of the major investments that we're making in education are really exciting. You guys are doing so many things right, and of course it starts with the leadership that Linda Darling-Hammond brought to the state of California, both at CTC and then also now as the president of the state board. And, you know, almost nothing gets invested in an education in a governor's budget without Linda's fingerprints on it. And so we've focused a lot on this one area. We could focus on a lot of different areas, but we've focused on this one area. My sense is number one is my job is to take from a lot of the stuff that I hear here that you guys are relating and make sure that we're communicating with, you know, legislators, Don and I together, or, you know, communicating with the rest of the legislature and the governor, the priorities that you have and specifically the solutions you have. But when you look at the environment we're in the near term, we've got some challenges. And that is that when we talk about wanting to recruit people into an interest into the profession, there's some things that we definitely want to encourage leaders at the statewide level to not do that help tamp down or create an environment that's not welcoming. And one of those is when we start going through budget cuts, or when we have policies in law that have school districts giving out pink slips before they have to. I mean, remember we got the March layoff period where you have to do these March layoff dates and you have no idea what the state budget's going to look like. So districts all over the state do these layoffs, and then when the budget is fine, what have we done to the teaching force and we saw this some years ago where several consecutive years in a row we were doing pink slips. What does that say to young people about the teaching profession? Do they really want to get into a gig where they have that kind of uncertainty? So there are things that we do that we can address deliberately to make the environment more welcoming. You guys are doing a lot of that work. We've done a tremendous amount. Now, credit to the legislature and the governor, because in my entire career, I have not seen a budget scenario like the one we're facing, with a dollar figure deficit that's bigger than anything I've ever seen in my career, and a governor who puts a budget out to say we are going to protect public education funding. Now, the situation has gotten a little bit worse. The question is at the May revision, which is a really important part of the budget process, this is on May 15th, will the governor continue to take that stance about protecting public education investment? It creates an environment that says volumes to prospective teachers about where our priorities are. And so we're going to see what happens with that. And then on the nuance of the programmatic stuff that you guys are talking about, you're setting the stage for what we do with the person that says, I want to be a teacher. And you're doing all of the right things. And maybe we can learn together about whatever other things you think we ought to be doing. But the things that we ought to think about is that when we are in a contraction, and whether we do state budget cuts or not, school districts, the overwhelming majority of school districts are cutting their budgets now. That's without reference to state budget cuts. Why? Declining enrollment, not having the resources on the STIRS and PERS program to fully fund it. The districts have to reach into their own resources to make that whole. And there are a number of other things. Insurance, everything is going up in terms of costs, so they're cutting their budgets. So as they cut their budgets, and we're seeing a shut-off of the COVID-era aid that we got from the federal government that was billions of dollars, there's this cliff effect. Well, what happens is a lot of the personnel that we recruited into schools that are not teachers, but they've played a role of supporting the teaching and learning that's happening, and that is mental health and well-being and a lot of other supports. The ELOP program that I think is here to stay, I hope, but we've brought a bunch of young people into those programs. Those are all the people that, to the extent that some of those opportunities are going away, not ELOP, but some of those other opportunities are going away, that's a potential pool of candidates to enter the teaching profession. And I think that's not lost on you, but we do have to seize that opportunity because we're talking about a huge number of people. And that funding stream is going to shut off, and those young people are going to say, what do I do next? And we have to capitalize on that.
Thank you, Kevin. Assemblymember Addis.
Well, good morning. I hope you're still awake and ready to go. There's a lot of talking, so if you want to stretch, feel free. But I thought I would tell you a tiny bit about myself because I'm positive you didn't read the bio, and you couldn't read everything that is in the brochure about me. And then I will answer this question. But I'm a 20-year teacher. I still have actually 4 active teaching credentials in multiple subjects, mild, moderate, special education, autism specialist, CLAD, Spanish single subject, and art education single subject. And thank you. And I taught students with special needs for 13 years. I see my San Luis County people right in front. Good to see you guys. And then I was a teacher on special assignment. I can't see you behind the pole over there, but I'm waving at you. I was a teacher on special assignment for English learner programs. I helped open our second dual immersion school in San Luis Coastal Unified. I helped close schools into COVID with an eye on English learners, and then open and go into online learning, open back up into hybrid learning. And so that's sort of the perspective that I bring when I answer this question around recruitment and retention. And I will tell you that I started my teaching career in 2000 with a 6-month-old. And it was a very, very difficult time. There were massive layoffs. In 2001, I got my job in San Luis Coastal Unified, and there were massive layoffs. And I think the one thing that protected me is I was in special education at the time. And so as pink slips were going out, special education teachers were not being let go. And I was able to create a 20-year career having come in at a time of real difficulty for teachers coming in, which is the exact opposite of what we're seeing today. Right now, we are really trying to get teachers to come into the profession, and it's very, very challenging. And so I've brought this lens to the legislature. I'm in the Women's Caucus. I am chair of the newly formed Central Coast Caucus as well, looking at sort of regional issues across the Central Coast and needs across the Central Coast. I sit on our education committee, and then I'm chair of the select committee on serving students with disabilities. And we had a hearing last year on the right to learn and touched on some of these recruitment and retention issues. And I promise you I'll answer the question, but I also want to give a shout out to Larry, to the county offices of education, because when I was at TOSA, I leaned on your work a lot in the English learner world, so thank you, and to Dr. Brescia. But when I think about recruitment and retention, people come into this profession because they love knowledge, they want to build the future, and they love sharing themselves with other people. But you cannot build a career on love alone. It's impossible. And you cannot build a career when the economics don't match up. You cannot build a career when you don't have housing. And I think of this issue really as, how do we create a women-friendly workplace? How do we create a family-friendly workplace? And I heard phenomenal things down this panel around structural pieces that county offices and other agencies are doing, and I absolutely support that work. In the legislature, when I say creating a women-friendly workplace or a family-friendly workplace, that's about accessibility to childcare, which the Women's Caucus has been very strong on pushing to expand financing of childcare and increase wages for childcare workers as well. I also think about family leave. Last year I carried a family leave bill for the California Faculty Association, and although it didn't get signed, it did help in negotiations for the Faculty Association, who now has 10 weeks of family leave, where they only had 6 weeks before. There's a bill moving through, I'm a co-author by, it's a CTA-sponsored bill for family leave in the K-14 setting right now. And I don't want to minimize the tough economic times that we're under, but we also have to think about how we're bringing people in when they can go into other fields where family leave does exist, where they can afford the cost of living and where they do have the flexibility. So I'll say in the legislature, on the child care side, on the family leave side, that's one of the two of the things that I'm fighting for. But I'll also say we're working on cost of living, lowering utility costs, addressing housing issues. I think San Luis Obispo County is a leader in terms of trying to address housing issues for teachers. And I would suggest thinking about this in terms of what you can do internally, and the things you've heard from your colleagues up here, what you can do internally, but also how you can build those public-private partnerships that are going to address housing, how you can build your partnerships with your universities that are going to address pathways, and how you can think of this as a regional issue in terms, because not everybody wants to leave their home community to go teach somewhere. Some people want to stay in their home community. And then finally, how you can grow from within. I know in my old school district, quite a bit, we would talk about lack of diversity within the teaching profession, or we would talk about, we feel like our teachers, our teacher demographics don't match our student demographics. But when I looked around and I saw who was serving our English learners, who was driving our buses, who was working in custodial, who were the landscaping professionals, absolutely there was a match on demographics, but not necessarily pathways for those folks to move into the teaching profession. So I would also suggest looking in our own backyards for folks that are putting their passion into the education system, but maybe we systemically haven't uplifted. So incredibly honored to be here. Thank you for your attention, and I'll pass it on.
Thank you. Dr. Smart.
Good morning, everyone. I'm coming from Humboldt County. I'm the deputy superintendent, and I would like to maybe paint a little picture because the lens that I'm coming from is one of contrasts. It's a Humboldt County. We've got 31 school districts. The smallest school district is 5 students. I happen to be the superintendent of that school district, Maple Creek. And our largest district is about 3,400 students. So comparatively to the rest of the state, Humboldt County is quite a unique place with 31 school districts and 15 charter schools. And there's reasons why that is. I won't go into it this morning. But we began a residency program in 2019 as part of one of the early grants. And one of the things that I would like to address is how powerful it was for us to strengthen our partnerships with our institutes of higher education, in our case, Cal Poly Humboldt, also our local community agencies and tribes. So we were set to address a very acute challenge in Humboldt County. We have almost double the rate of students with that have IEPs, and we did have quite a lack of qualified teachers with their special education credentials. So we wanted to address that through residencies. And over the last 5 years, we've now graduated about 55 residents. They're actually still in Humboldt County, because that's another challenge. Once a lot of students graduate from Cal Poly Humboldt, they go back home where a lot of them came to start their careers. This had a really nice compounding effect. It allowed students to find a livable wage and actually enter the field in a place that they loved, but ordinarily and historically had a hard time staying in. And I think the true power of residencies in that time was it allowed us to look at it as a proof of concept and then continually look at how is this going to show up in other aspects of education. And since then, we've partnered with the Blue Lake Rancheria. Humboldt County is home to the 2 largest Native American tribes, the Hoopa and Yurok. And we started a Grow Your Own Administrator program specifically designed to get Native educators into administrative roles. And that's been wildly successful. Another program that we're starting to look at is how can we improve our access to career technical education through public-private partnerships. Humboldt County is going through quite an economic evolution through offshore wind and land-based fish farms. And so I'm happy to speak to the sustainability as we move forward today. Thank you.
Thank you. Superintendent Schrum.
Thank you. Kirk Schrum, Superintendent Visalia Unified, so thank you for the opportunity to be here. Recruitment, of course, gets you in the door, but we know that leadership and the conditions leaders set in their district and in the schools ultimately is what keeps people in the profession. And so this is my second year, finishing up second year in Visalia and in the state of California. And so I do want to echo all the pieces around residencies. That was unique to me coming to California and seeing the pathways that have been created and how we've worked in Visalia to strengthen those. The residencies, the pathways, it really is amazing and a unique thing within California. And to the point where over 70+% of the individuals we hire, we already know. We already know what we need to do to support them, right? Because they were a student teacher, or they were in a residency, they were in a pathway that include, classified to certificated and those things. But what we've also done is really begin to focus on leadership and introduce into the district the vocabulary around our job at the district level is to create the conditions for our leaders to be successful. They create the conditions for our teachers, for our principals to be successful, and our teachers create the conditions for our students to be successful. And so investing in leadership supports all of this work around recruitment and retention and the pathways, which have been phenomenal. But now that we have those individuals and they're built, what do we do now? How do we build upon that? And so we've created a framework of leadership, right, to describe what does it mean to be a leader in Visalia Unified. So it's clear across every school site, across everywhere at the district, right? But then also investing in those leaders through innovative partnerships, and we'll talk more about those with some of our partners, University of Virginia, Partners for Leaders in Education, and others, because we know ultimately teachers and professionals stay with individuals who will walk alongside them, support their skill development, that they see as a partner, and also provide that feedback so that I can grow as an educator. And so we have found that building upon the residencies and those things to sustain, it's really that investment in leadership that we think is going to continue to grow the profession.
Thank you. Dr. Whitson.
I think I'll get up too, so since I'm on the edge. What is the second largest group of certificated people that work in our schools? School counselors, yes. So Anyway, I am the executive director for the California Association of School Counselors, and there's been so much that has happened in our profession. I could echo what Dr. Sandy said and some of the other folks on this panel in regards to what we have been doing, but the number of school counselors working in California schools has doubled in the last 12 years. So that is amazing, you know, to have that happen. And so we have to ask why that is. And there's been a lot of innovations that have happened over the time. One is we have scholarships for school counselors now, so that has brought more into the field. We have a large group of universities that offer this program. I think there's 31 currently offering a school counseling training program, so that's also a way that we can scale up for our students. The second thing is residency program. I want to thank Marvin Lopez for having me here because we have been working with Tulare County on their residency program, because what's unique about this residency program over teacher residency program is we're having to ask the question is what is excellence in school counseling, and really take that opportunity to mold the profession. So Dr. Ferrari from Fresno Pacific, I've been working with her on that, and we've been asking some really tough questions about how we do that. But the residency program, the scholarship program is phenomenal, but also there has been two initiatives that are coming through the pike that I think is important. One is that we changed the laws for school counseling in 2022, thanks to Kevin and working with their lobbying firm. We're able to now bill for Medi-Cal LEA equal to what a marriage and family therapists and others. So the sustainability, so going back to residency, the sustainability is such a big issue for us. And so when we get pink notices or March 15th notices, you know, the schools and teachers, they get a cold and we get pneumonia, you know. So school counselors are very used to getting March 15th notices, and we can understand why that happens. And so how do we sustain it? The other thing that's coming ahead, probably more next year, would be the multi-payer fee schedule, which is a way that we're going to be billing for services, mental health services and physical health services in our schools to our insurance providers. Now, I'm not saying that's going to go smoothly. I can see all kinds of complications, but it's coming. And I think that marries really well with the residency program, because if we're going to have folks in our schools, school counselor, how do we sustain them over the course of time? And so that alone, I think, is going to really be very promising. And lastly, we have wellness coaches that are coming. And so there was a grant out for that. What I would like to see it as a pathway for school counselors, and not like an independent classified position with a 2 or 4 year degree, but actually them working forward to be either school psychologists, school social workers, or school counselors as we move forward with using those people on our school campuses. So thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to just point out that we're seeing a couple of trends here that line up with the research from the early 2000s. And one of the first things that I'm hearing all of our panelists say is collaborating with other LEAs. And I can't overstress this. When we did the initial research, we found that LEAs that worked with other LEAs to share resources, contacts, had more success. However, don't kid yourself. There are other agencies, especially those with more resources, that have no problem just offering signing bonus, and they look at, we've got ours, we don't really care about the rest of everybody else. That's detrimental to our profession, to our field. We need to speak out on that. Sharing best practices. The initial scholarship money for residency models and classified to certificated are working across the state. So when we speak to our legislators and when our advocates go forward, we need to say, look, this is working, and everybody needs to sing that same song. The embracing of different platforms of, you know, my baby boomer generation, that the first thing when you heard the bzz, bom, bom for Yahoo coming online with the emails is what we remember. Most of you in this room, you've had an iPhone since you were in school. And I had to remove a dial phone from my first school office as principal because the students couldn't use it. And they kept taking up the assistant's time explaining it. I really appreciate what Assemblymember Addis said about, and you were stealing a little Churchill quote from World War II, about seizing the opportunity with a crisis. We have a lot of people who are going to be moved around in our profession. What are we doing as talent ambassadors to move them into something else to stay with us? We really, the old adage of post and pray, you post the position, you pray somebody show up, that needs to be dead and buried. We have to look at things differently. I heard looking for the whole person, the employee, childcare, family support, leveraging other items we have in our communities, partnering with public agencies, the grow your own, not only in the support services classroom, but in the leadership, and then scholarships. How many districts are offering scholarships? Starbucks offers scholarships for their employees. We're one of the largest employers in the state of California, and we argue over whether we pay for professional development or not. We have control over that. Okay, we're going to start with the next question, and you get to start first. Okay, our next question is, what is one initiative or that you would that your agency is implementing to address this right now? What is one initiative? And if you can't do that, what is one we should be doing?
Yeah, we are, this is from the school counselors, and we are offering courses on mental health. And those courses we're partnering with Santa Barbara, Cal State Summer, well, Santa Barbara State. Anyway, I don't know how to say it correctly. But we're partnering with them to offer units, and these courses are MTSS, mental health, Medi-Cal, LEA billing. Well, when we're finished, we have 4 courses that are launched, but when we're finished, we'll have 12 courses altogether. And we think that will strengthen the profession with that kind of professional development and incentivize it because they'll get units to move up on the salary scale also.
Awesome, thank you. So for us, it's continuing that investment in leadership so our leaders know and understand, have clarity around what it means to be an effective leader, so that as we recruit and retain the teachers, they're in settings where they want to stay, where they want to thrive. And so focusing on that partnership, we've partnered, as I mentioned, with University of Virginia Partners for Leaders in Education, also our county office, to help build that leadership skill set so that all of our leaders across every school site know what it means when these teachers come in. How do I create those conditions for them to be successful? And we're seeing that pay off not only in student performance, but also some amazing retention. And again, through those recruitment strategies, people want to come to Visalia Unified. They know they're going to be supported. And so each year we're seeing our classes, our schools begin with over 99% of our classrooms staffed with a full-time teacher. And it's all of these things coming together with that investment in leadership that create the conditions for that to happen. So that's what we're focused on.
Thank you. So in addition to getting teachers into the classroom and well prepared, we're also laser focused on building the infrastructure around the multi-payer fee schedule in Humboldt County. And that looks like making investments in developing our workforce, making sure that where there's retraining and advancement opportunities for paraprofessionals to become wellness coaches, that sort of thing, to get us prepared. We're part of what's called round 1 of the multi-payer fee schedule. And so we anticipate by next year, we're going to have these coaches in a consortium fashion around Humboldt County integrated into the schools. One of the primary reasons why we're building this infrastructure is to address some of the things that are not seen but certainly have an impact on teacher wellness and sustainability. And that's what we all recognize is the increased responsibility around providing mental health support for students, whether it's behavior, whether it's other things. Teachers are expected to actually become those kinds of professionals, and they may not, and in most cases are not qualified to actually do that. We want to stop shifting the burden, more of the burden on mental health to teachers, to allow teachers to thrive in what they're trained to do, and at the same time build the workforce to increase mental health supports in a sustainable manner through the multi-payer fee schedule.
Well, I mentioned that I'm chair of the Select Committee on Serving Students with Disabilities, and so personally, what that means is listening to the field and finding out from the field what the issues are and how to solve them. So it's instrumental being here today and listening to everybody on the panel in terms of their innovative ideas. And we will continue through that select committee to look at teacher retention and recruitment, or recruitment and retention. Also moving through the legislature is SB 1391. It's on the Senate side. That would create a teacher training and retention dashboard within the data system on or before January 2026. And so this would look at information on the teacher workforce, trends regarding teacher training pipelines and credentialing, teacher hiring, and issues that we've been talking about today. And then I want to touch on something my colleague mentioned, offshore wind, and I thought, oh, I'm also the chair of the Select Committee on Offshore Wind Energy, which is a new industry coming to California. But it got me thinking about teachers as lifelong learners and how we can support teachers as lifelong learners as industry changes and new technology and new fields develop. Teachers want to be part of that. And so how we connect into the future, and I think Dr. Brescia mentioned, how we can think creatively around making sure that our teachers continue to stay connected and view themselves as building the future is another piece of the innovative ideas that we need to continually be pondering on. And offshore wind, certainly up in Humboldt as well as in San Luis Obispo County, is going to be a huge piece of that.
One of the things that we're doing, in addition to supporting the legislation and working that legislation that obviously furthers your collective objectives, is to also think about some of the biggest investments we made in California in the sort of the collective effort that you guys are doing was with money that was going to be showing up multiple years, but it was characterized as one-time money. It's investment of billions of dollars, but eventually it runs out. Is that even in a difficult year like this, we need to be having a conversation with and giving voice to the idea of how do we make investments in these things sustainable and ongoing in the future. And it's not a bad time to have the conversation, even though the state's broke. We need to have that conversation so that when the cycle changes and when we have money to invest again, we're thinking about or we're contemplating how we make some of these great things that you guys are doing sustainable and funded.
So one of the initiatives in LACOE that we are most proud of is our focus on well-being, inclusion, and belonging. We've done a lot of work to not only survey our county office community, but to also respond to the feedback that we receive. And so there was a time where there would be an option to fund wellness programs for staff. And we've seen year after year where there are lots of fiscal resources that are allocated to support student well-being and counseling, but districts would have options on whether to fund employee assistance programs or to handle it case-by-case basis. And one thing that we're most proud of is that Superintendent Eduardo said, you know what, we want to see wellness countywide in all of our LEAs and our school districts or charters that have not budgeted for it or don't have the resources for it. We're going to fund it from the county office. And so countywide, there's employee assistance programs where employees can seek out mental health support as needed. And we know once we recruit someone and once they become a part of our LEA family, we want to retain them, and people stay where they feel that they belong or where they're included or where their well-being is important. And so we're thankful that we're able to do that. Now, we understand that not every LEA or county office has the resources to do that. And so one thing that would be fantastic if there was a way to ensure that throughout the state of California, well-being was a priority, not just for student counseling services, but also for the employees that are that interface directly with kids, or support staff that provide that support for them behind the scenes.
So one of our initiatives is actually called Educator Pathways, and this stemmed from actually just before the pandemic. We had begun strategic planning around diversifying the educator workforce, and that diversifying the educator workforce, as we've heard at this table, is not just about recruitment but also retention. And we know that diverse educators just are not staying in the field, so how do we address that as well? So through our educator pathways, we have done several things. We have hired and trained advisors. Well, let me back up and say that the focus of our educator pathways is to remove barriers into the teaching profession and into the education profession, even beyond teaching. So things like, how do I utilize EdJoin? What is this website that you could go on to and apply for jobs and look for openings across districts and charter schools? So as simple as that, removing the barriers, creating free exam prep for anyone across the state. And our focus is really, yes, let's remove those barriers and bring in educators from diverse backgrounds, but the focus is, who do we want in our schools? Who do we want in the classrooms in front of our students who are going to have the greatest impact? So as we remove those barriers, these individuals can focus more on their students. And so we have the exam prep, job search guides. We do presentations throughout the community, whether it's at a university, community college, virtual. We'll do presentations on all the pathways into education, whether it's going into a classified position or going into a certificated position. Oftentimes we forget that we have that education speak. I know I do. So even just understanding that someone from the general public is not necessarily going to understand the structure of a school district, that a school is not just made up of teachers, it's made up of so many other people. It's a village. And so again, helping with that understanding to remove even that barrier to bring people into the field. We've developed a website that has all sorts of videos. We have a YouTube channel. This is free to anyone across the state. And really at the end of the day, our goal is to be that social capital for anyone who we come across for the rest of their career. So it could be from high school, middle school, all the way beyond. We've hired these advisors who provide mentoring. They connect potential future candidates to grants that would be specific to them. We collaborate with our credentials department, with early ed departments in community colleges, to bring information about preschool permits. Being a preschool teacher can be a pathway into a PK3 credential or any other type of credential. And then really getting into the recruitment piece of it, we offer affinity group, community of practice for any educator, certificated or classified, who would like to join. And we actually have guest speakers who are there to share their experiences, and we also have a mental health professional who's there as well. And then again, this is about removing barriers, recruitment and retention. So part of this initiative with Educator Pathways is also really looking at the learning to teach continuum, not just as learning to teach, but learning to teach and lead. So one of the ways that we do this, we offer a lot of programs, just like many of our county office partners do, like intern programs, residencies, induction, added authorizations, the designated subjects credentials, which include CTE credentials. And in those programs, we need mentors, we need instructors. And so what we're continuously doing is really building strong relationships with the individuals who come through our educator pathways, who go through any of our programs, and keep an eye on who are those potential leaders. And at what point can we tap into them once they clear their credentials? And then we turn around and invite them to be a mentor in the induction program, or a mentor in the intern program, or be an instructor. So if you look at currently our instructor pool for all of our programs, at some point, many of them were in one of our programs. And a few people, even on my team, I was their induction mentor. So that mindfulness of seeing who's coming through our programs, and as we think about barrier removal and addressing retention, who would be a good face in front of the next generation of teachers. And very lastly, I want to say, and I think this is a good time to talk about it because California standards for the teaching profession have just been revised, is really looking at our evaluation system. And this goes back to the comment that was made earlier about leadership. Looking at our evaluation system as a growth system versus this is a moment in time, this is a one and done, we got to get this done. And so what we've done is developed educator effectiveness and evaluation, again, all through Ed Pathways, where we work with school districts and county offices, mainly, and charters within our county, but also even outside of our county, to really look at revising and enhancing evaluation systems so that they become a growth system. And this was actually developed several years ago and was built on the CTA white paper, Greatness by Design, and Getting Teacher Evaluation Right by Linda Darling Hammond. And the premise is you can't develop a growth system in isolation. Everyone needs to be around the table. So your union leadership, your district leadership, usually a team of anywhere from 8 to 14, depending on the size of the district, come together and spend 2 years revising, enhancing, collecting data from other teachers in the district, and piloting a system.
Wow. There is so much good work underway that's being reported at this table. Hats off to all of you for the ways in which you innovate in your particular context, and very, very impressive. You know, California has an incredibly complex array of pathways and options to become a teacher. And that's great because essentially what we've created is a system where we can meet most candidates where they are and get them on track to become a teacher. That's the upside to having this complexity. The downside is that it is extraordinarily hard for an average person, and even an above average person, to figure it out on their own. We have undergraduate pathways where you complete a degree and a credential at the same time simultaneously. There are laws you have to work around to make that work. There are student teaching-based programs, fifth-year programs that have been California's tradition. There are intern programs offered by institutions of higher ed and by local education agencies, different in their nature and their culture. There are residency programs. There are apprenticeships just beginning to get started. There are classified pathways. If you want to meet basic skills, we've had about 8 different ways in which you could do that. Now we have a proposal on the table, finally, to recognize that a baccalaureate degree could meet the basic skills requirement. Okay, right? Thank you, Governor Newsom. That'll help. We're not eliminating the basic skills expectation, but we're recognizing the obvious that someone with a college degree probably has met basic reading, writing, and arithmetic, and if they haven't, they can pick it up. Subject matter requirements. The CSET has been an incredible barrier for many, many teachers coming in. These standardized tests don't always get what you know, but they manage to keep you out if you haven't hit the particular point that you're supposed to meet. So creating options like transcript review at the local university and program level. If you've met the basic domains in the coursework you've taken of a subject matter in an area where you're going to teach, or this seems like a crazy idea. If you have a degree in math, maybe we could agree that you've met the standards to be a math teacher for subject matter, all right? Some things that then the legislature has been working, I think, chipping away at some of these barriers by creating many options that are gonna make it a little easier for people to actually get in. But a thing what we've really needed, and a couple of years ago, the legislature and the administration put funding into the commission's budget to create a roadmap to teaching. And we have a button on our website, and I invite you, please go check it out. We're building this, and it's growing every single day. But with this roadmap to teaching initiative, we were able to hire 8 dedicated career counselors, if you will, people who can help candidates navigate the pathway. Somebody who might want to be a teacher can reach somebody and get one-on-one guidance. They can also get it at many of the places that are right down the row here from me. But we actually at the commission now have experts who can guide people through this maze and find their way. We've also published some playbooks. One that is laying out pathways to a credential, all of these myriad pathways, trying to put it in language that a lay person can unpack and begin to understand. Information and dashboards on the funding, the array of funding that's available to support candidates who want to come through and get a credential. I mean, we have invested a significant amount of money into building pathways, providing scholarships. These are critical investments, but candidates themselves have a real problem trying to braid. That's our new word when we talk about these fundings, braid these resources so that they can move their way into teaching. I think school districts and counties are challenged with how to help you braid the resources. I think higher education institutions have had a hard time figuring out how you can draw down the different funding sources to support a candidate to get through. There are too many of them, it's too complex, and it's not enough all at the same time. It'd be great at some point to have one portal like FAFSA in California where it gets braided for you. Maybe AI could help us with this. But what the commission is doing while we're waiting for better systems to come on board is creating a fairly readily handy and easy to decipher playbook for how to locate some resources. Increasingly, what we're finding, and this has always been true, but it's really at the point where we have this kind of shortage again facing us of teachers, it is incredibly hard for somebody to complete preparation without some kind of funding to support them. And that's something that this series of investments has really been trying to bring about. But I'm excited about the Roadmap to Teaching initiative that we have had the opportunity to launch, invite feedback about how we can make this easier, better, and also to provide candidates with somebody, a navigator, to help them get through the complexities.
I think the one thing about being the last speaker on a question is that you listen to all of this and you realize, what else do I have to add so that I'm not repeating? And I'm going to go with community schools, surprisingly. How many of you are actively involved in the community schools movement in California? Ooh, I should see more hands raised than that. It's a little surprising because we're talking about teacher retention. We're not talking about students at this time, if you can make that distinction, which I know is an artificial distinction. But Mary talked about braiding resources. And when I think that in California we're very lucky to be in a time where the state has a very comprehensive, robust statewide system of support for schools, kids, and neighborhoods. And if we think about how we braid those resources together to help recruit and sustain teachers over time, right? Recalibrating our thinking a little bit, because when we think about these initiatives, we're mostly focused on the student, but we know that we can't do that because it's the teachers who are animating the educational experience in schools for those students. So what we've been doing with primarily our LACO partners is we've been braiding together our efforts around community schooling and teacher residency programs to help build a sustainable workforce in LA. We've been doing that in Los Angeles Unified School District as well. And so if we can pivot our thinking to think about community schools as sites of teacher learning, community schools as sites of teacher preparation, community schools as sites of teacher professional development, community schools as sites of communities of practice, again, as I said earlier, across the trajectory of your career. And it takes both the County Office of Education, Institution of Higher Ed, and the local districts. It takes intersegmental partnerships to make this work. And in doing so, we have ended up taking on some leadership roles with LAUSD to be part of the regional technical assistance centers and the development of those, and also the statewide technical assistance centers and the development of those. In addition, think about braiding. When my mom used to braid my hair, it was always 3 strands, right? So I got the teacher residency strand, I've got the community school strand, but to a point earlier about leadership, there's a leadership strand that we need to braid together too. So again, in partnership with our county offices of education, we have been very invested in the 21st Century California Leadership Academy. How many of your county offices are involved in developing that leadership through that statewide system of support? I would encourage all of you. There are so many resources and so many opportunities. And the great thing about these systems of support, you get to decide how to braid it together. So you get to meet the unique needs of your county offices and districts. And these resources are free and available to everyone. So when I come back here next year and we're talking and I'm not sitting in the corner freezing under that air conditioning, when I say who's involved in the statewide system of support, I want to see everybody's hands up. And you'll all be involved in different ways, right? But there are going to be meaningful ways that are going to help you bring teachers in, keep them in, bring leaders in, keep them in, and ultimately improve academic, social, emotional outcomes for your students. Because schools should be places where teachers and students learn and find the sense of belonging that they need to continue, and the agency they need to continue in their profession and also to see themselves as active participants of change in our growing democracy.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. I'm Sarah from Oakland Unified. I am curious, from your vantage point, we have several high-stakes exams. We talked about the CBEST and the CSET. We also have the EdTPA and the RECA. So we're seeing some of our residents graduate. We've invested $60,000 in them. They have a short-term staff permit and don't pass the EdTPA or the RECA, and then have to substitute at that point. I'm just curious if you see anything coming down around addressing some of the high-stakes exams.
I think Keita and Mary on that one there.
Everybody backs away from that question, and I lean in, okay? Because so we've had a lot of legislation in recent years about this. We had Senate Bill 488 that required the commission to update its literacy standards and build a literacy performance assessment that would replace the RECA. That's in development, it's in pilots, we're going to be field testing it next year. It must be ready to go by fall of 2025, and the RECA is retired at the point at which that assessment is in play. That assessment is expected by 488, that bill, to be built right into the existing performance assessments that are here. And so for the California TPA, or the Cal TPA, which is the state-sponsored model, that's what we're doing. And at the same time, we've heard a great deal of feedback from the field. UCLA participated in a survey, and the California Teachers Association conducted a survey of their members and provided some real feedback about how they are struggling with performance assessment in their preparation programs. Some of the issues, inflexibility in the tasks that make the task difficult to deploy authentically in their clinical practice. So that's one thing, a requirement that you videotape 20 minutes of practice and clip it. A lot of complaints about having to clip and edit their videos to get those. So these kinds of very technical issues that while teachers are in the pressure point of completing preparation, completing clinical study, and taking tasks for this assessment, those are real issues that they're experiencing, and they've been telling us about it. So the literacy performance assessment has been the beneficiary of a lot of that feedback, and flexibilities have been built into it. Some things have been pulled out of it to make it a more streamlined experience. At the same time, the literacy performance assessment must help a candidate demonstrate that they're ready to teach students how to read. And that's an incredibly important part of what we're doing. So we are adjusting the instrument itself in response to the feedback we're getting from folks. We've also adjusted the passing standard, if you will, so it's not an absolute passing standard anymore, consistent with state law. We are allowing people who score within a couple of points of the passing standard, what we call one standard error of measure, to be recommended by their program. If there's evidence from the preparation program that they've met the standard, but their performance for whatever reason was off a bit, they can be recommended for a credential. So we've created some flexibility for candidates. 90% of the people who take and sit for this assessment and complete both cycles on the Cal TPA pass it. Not necessarily on the first time, but they're in the 80th percentile, about 80% pass it on the first time, and some have to redo a cycle currently. But we think with this flexibility around the passing standard, we may see fewer people who are in need of retakes. Our goal would be that nobody has to retake it, that the program has been so exceptional in preparing candidates to demonstrate their readiness to teach that they ace it. And we have some programs already that 100% of their candidates take it and pass it. So this has been a moving target in our preparation and our theory of action about how to prepare teachers. We have 82 institutions and hundreds of pathways within those 82 institutions that prepare our workforce. A great deal of variety across those 82 institutions, and I love variety. I think teaching requires innovative thinking, and being prepared to teach requires innovation. At the same time, we need to have a common standard for credentialing somebody as ready to teach. And the performance assessment has been imperfect since it was created, but we continue to try to perfect it, is the one standard that we have. We have 3 iterations of it, the Cal TPA, the Ed TPA, and Cal State Fresno's FAST system. We have law that allows programs or institutions to get together and build their own performance assessments. They just have to meet CTC standards in order to offer it. The TPA is shedding light for us on what's happening in preparation. And we are seeing things that a performance assessment can show us that without a performance assessment we won't see, like disparate impact on populations of teachers, right? Who is succeeding, who's not succeeding? What kind of support and preparation are they getting to demonstrate their readiness to teach? It's been a really important lens into practice that helps us make sure we have a credentialed workforce that has demonstrated what they're doing. So there may be others. Anne Marie, I don't know whether you want to jump on that.
You've done such a good job.
Okay.
I asked our panel to give us some homework. If they could ask for one thing that we should do to continue recruitment and retention efforts once we leave this room today. And I know Assemblymember Addis wants to start.
Only my regrets, I have to leave. But write letters in support of our bills, please. particularly the family leave bill, write letters in support of increased childcare funding across the state of California. I think that's the biggest thing in terms of the legislative process. It's being able to hear from local communities that you support the legislation that we're putting forward that are going to do good things for your communities, for your children, for your teachers. So thank you so much for having me.
My turn? Okay. If I was to request one thing is do a comprehensive inventory of your assets, your community assets. Understand truly at its core and at its foundation who your community is. And if you don't know the people involved in organizations from your local tribes to the local chapter, the NAACP, so on and so forth, you are by definition missing opportunities. Not only for recruiting new teachers, but for developing new innovative programs that you alone cannot see and cannot do. So I would say spend some time inventorying the assets in your community. One quick thing that came out of us doing that is we realized that there was a lot of people dedicated to working on systemic problems in the community, but we were all effectively speaking different languages of improvement. And so what we've begun doing is implementing, and we have a 3-year partnership with MIT and Dr. Peter Senge and Meta Bowl to integrate in a very intentional way compassionate systems awareness, which focuses on social-emotional well-being and systems dynamics. It merges those two things. We're not only focusing on integrating that into the schools, but into the Chamber of Commerce, with business leaders, with other governmental organizations. So we arrive at the place when we look at these large transformational things that we are often not in control of, we are better able to work together through that common language of improvement.
Sure, so invest in your leaders, right? They're the ones that are creating the conditions, so involving them in all of these things early on. Our principals interviewing teachers that are in the residencies, do we know these, right? The more involved they are, the more ownership they have, and they're gonna move mountains, right, to make sure those teachers are successful. And I would say build upon the successes. We have an individual in our district who began as a classified employee, began as a paraprofessional, took advantage of the opportunities, moved into a teaching role, was supported along the way, moved from a teacher role into a school leadership role, and now for the past 2 years is one of our principal supervisors and now at the district office. So highlight those success stories, show that these things work, bring a face to these programs and these practices. People resonate with that, right? And then you have your powerful stories of transformation, and then these are the leaders that you're investing in and have invested in along the way that are going to transform our school sites. It's our teachers, our leaders, and others that transform our school sites. And there's no shortage, you know, we must continue to invest in those things. So that would be what I would say to take away. Invest in your leaders and highlight those success stories.
And for the school counseling profession, take a look at your performance evaluation documents. A lot of school districts are still evaluating school counselors on their teacher evaluation tools. So when you look at that, what we've done as an association, we've worked in partnership to develop performance standards. And so I have to give a plug to Visalia because they were one of the first districts to come out with performance evaluations along with the new California standards for the school counseling profession, which has been a wonderful asset to that. We're working on a continuum of practice now that will be out in 2025 to really help underscore the work that needs to be done. And lastly, is that with school counselors, there is for 25 years, they've been taught to be data-driven and to show results in regards to your student outcomes, whether it's attendance or behavior or academics. They've been taught to do that in their university programs, and then so build on that. Build on a comprehensive program where it's data-driven and accountable to your overall system and to your LCAP.
There's been a lot of great ideas that have come from this panel this morning, and it may even feel a little overwhelming. So I recommend that if you're able to consider one idea or one possible initiative that you heard this morning that you consider might be a great idea and something that a team of you within your organization can come together and consider it as an option. The second thing I would like for you to take away is utilize your resources. If you aren't already extremely collaborative, become collaborative. We're in this together. Don't recreate the wheel if you don't have to. When we were considering at LACO remote work and alternative work schedule programs, we looked at what was already out there, what was happening in the private sector around remote work and alternative work schedules. And this was all to support our recruitment and retention efforts. So that's just one example, but if there's a great idea that you have and someone else is already doing it well, utilize your resources and connect and make it work for you.
Kanika stole my line. I actually wrote here, don't reinvent the wheel. 100% I agree. Just pick that one initiative, and to add on to that, as you think about your partnerships and think about who you have on your team, really consider what's in your sphere of influence, what's in your sphere of control. I know when we wrote our white paper and strategic plan for diversifying the educator workforce, Adina, who's somewhere in this room, she and I sat there silently once we finished the draft, and we were extremely overwhelmed. And we're like, oh my gosh, we published this and now we have to do something. And so we started with what's in our sphere of influence, sphere of control, and go from there. So along with that, utilize your partnerships, not just within your organization, but I would say that county offices and also community colleges, universities, they all want to partner with you and collaborate and provide support. So it doesn't hurt to call around, pick people's brains, and build those relationships.
So so many important ideas and good advice here about building your partnerships and about, figuring out the one thing, and I love what's within your sphere of influence. I want to draw our attention back to retention as a key issue here. The Commission just released our most recent teacher supply report, and some of the data that we included I want to share with you. There are currently 450,000 credential holders who have active credentials who are eligible to work in their schools. 312,000 of them are working in the schools. That leaves about 150,000 who are not working in the schools. About 15% of them are multiple subject credential holders. 12% are special education teachers. To put some numbers around that, it's somewhere between around 20,000 multiple subject teachers currently credentialed eligible to serve who are not serving in the schools, and maybe about up to 15,000 fully credentialed special ed teachers who are right now credentialed, who could be in our schools. In addition, there are about 300,000 teachers, credential holders with expired credentials that haven't renewed as of right now. 300,000 of them. About 170,000 of those are multiple subject credential holders. All right, that's 50% of the people who haven't renewed their credentials are multiple subject credential holders. About 20,000 are special education teachers. So we've got a lot of people out there fully credentialed who have walked away from schools for a variety of reasons, and we don't know what they are, but that represents an opportunity to go back to Winston Churchill. Thank you for that quote. That's an opportunity. We know teachers have had an extraordinarily challenging time through COVID. It's a hard job on your best day, but we've had conditions in the last several years that have made it really challenging and have changed a lot of people's ideas about where they want to spend their time, and really, just leaving it at that, where they want to spend their time. We need to, at each school district and school and county in this state be looking for these people and seeing what we could do to bring them back. We've talked about working conditions, and there's some really nice things got said down the table here about the criticality of leadership and the criticality of creating schools that people want to be in. And that's what the leaders in our school districts and counties do every single day. But there are people out there we could be pulling in right now. 2/3 of the credentials we issued in special education, and this is plus or minus, it's about 2/3 every year, come in through internship programs. So they start with 150 hours of pre-service preparation, and then they take over special education classrooms. And we've got maybe 30 to 40,000 fully credentialed folks out there. How can we get them to come back?
That was beautiful. I agree. I just want to take up something that you said earlier. Take advantage of the resources of your local universities and community colleges. And when you think about the resources of a university, oftentimes in education, we only think about the schools of education. Think more broadly about all of the different opportunities that a university has at its disposal. Because your public universities in particular, one of our key missions is around service. We're about research, teaching, and service. And it's that service mission and the teaching service in this mission in this group that I feel like we don't call upon our universities enough to help our K-12 public schools to reach the potential that they have. I also want to say, related to that, there's a long-standing narrative. Mary will tell you I keep it real 100% of the time. There's a long-standing narrative that divides institutions of higher education and K-12 schools and county offices of education. And it is that narrative around universities are too theoretical and LEAs act without any evidence base. And I'm going to tell you now, I'm trying to think of a word right now that it would be appropriate. My father would not be frowning at me if I said it. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. The sweet spot is at the intersection of research, practice, and justice. And we can only get to that intersection together. And so I would ask that we suspend some of these long-standing stereotypes and narratives that separate us, P20, and instead reach out to one another and say, yes, we come from different institutional cultures, and there are things that universities can do easily that you can't do easily. There are things that you can do easily that universities can't do easily. But if we put it all out on the table, and we put our unique needs and assets on the table, we can actually create pipelines, pathways, and innovation that get teachers in the door, keep teachers in the door, and create systems in schools that generate positive outcomes for all of us. So my nugget is, this is your homework. Call one of your institutions of higher ed and community colleges, if you haven't already done so, and see what's possible at that intersection of research, practice, and justice. I think that's where the good stuff happens. It happens, that's the way it happens at UCLA, and I think it happens in a lot of other places.
Thank you very much. Dr. Francois said it very, almost got it there. Said it very clearly. We have to take action. And if someone doesn't reach up a hand or out a hand, shame on us for that. I started out as a custodian in San Diego Unified School District, and it was a support staff member that said, hey, I noticed you were tutoring these kids. Why don't you think about becoming a teacher? Somebody has to spark that. Walk across the street to your community college and talk to them about the bus driver training program. Do something. We can't just sit in the lunchroom and gripe about what's wrong. We have to take action. I want to thank the panelists today for taking their time out of their professional schedules to share with us. Thank the center for helping host this today, and thank all of you for participating, not only now, but in the initial research almost 2 decades ago when we started this. The themes are the same. We have to invest in our local constituency. Our local people who are in our seats and chairs today are going to be our employees tomorrow. They look and represent the students who are in our classrooms. We can't all look to Harvard to send us their interns for Teach for America. That's not going to be the solution. We have to grow your own. And we have to look at everybody and be talent ambassadors. Again, we need to look at our business partners and say, what are they doing better? It's embarrassing when Target, Walmart, and Starbucks do a better job of recruiting employees internally and externally than we do. And that's on us. We have to take responsibility for that. So we're going to take a very brief break. I'll let everyone take a break for a moment, get some coffee. Restrooms are downstairs. Then the reconvening is going to be discussion in tables about some strategies you heard and what's working in your LEAs. And we have 3 or 4 people that will have a recorder, a digital recorder at each table to get notes. And I'm taking the notes again, transcribing. The 2 research briefs you have were follow-ups from Symposium 1 in 2019, follow-ups from the following symposium in 21, and we're going to do the same. You're going to see themes. Everything everyone said up here is working. It's not the same in Humboldt as it is in San Diego or LA or Santa Cruz or San Mateo. But all of the strategies work. How do we leverage that? How do we communicate? Both Kevin from Capital Advisors and Assemblymember Addis heard what we were saying. And this was critical, so thank you. Assemblymember Addis and Senator Laird are both from my district in San Luis Obispo County. They're on appropriations for education budget. What she said, please remember, write those letters and communicate. If you have classified to certificate and it's working, say something. Fill out the survey that Dr. Sandy's office sends out, because those grants came out of Dr. Sandy's office. We need to support that they're working. And I don't know about you, but the comments on classified employees, same demographic as our students, live in our community. Many of them already own homes and have multi-generations of family there.